In 2011, one of my favourite consoles was released, the Nintendo 3DS. Sure, it had a slow start with pretty much nothing good to play at launch, but once Ocarina of Time 3D, Mario 3D Land, and Mario Kart 7 came along, the plucky little glasses-free 3D system shot straight up my list of favourites. In 2013, a Nintendo Direct gave us our first look at a new top-down Zelda title, and you could even watch the trailer on the 3DS in full stereoscopic 3D. My excitement was instant. The 3D looked great, and getting a classic top-down Zelda was something I wasn't sure would ever happen again. Also, for the first time in the series' history, we were returning to a map from a previous title. It's time to return to the Hyrule of A Link to the Past and discover the new hidden world of Lorule, with The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Pixel Tavern. If you're new here, then welcome to the channel. Or if you've been watching this series up to this point, then I hope you've enjoyed it so far. There's a few more games to cover, including Echoes of Wisdom that released just this week, at least at the time I recorded this. If you want to stay notified of any future releases, please subscribe if you're not already, and click the bell icon to stay notified of when the next video comes out. This time I'm on to the 17th game in the series with A Link Between Worlds. It took traditional Zelda and mixed it with modern gameplay methodologies to make a very unique title. It also has one of the best core mechanics in the series. A heads up with the footage in this video as well, to be clear, it's quite obviously not actually coming from a 3DS. And it's not my own footage either. I don't have a 3DS capture card and I can't justify the cost to get one considering there's only one 3DS game left. Also, the software-based recorders do not put the games in a particularly great light. As such, I used footage from Archive64 on YouTube using the 4K fan mod from enricomagnifico.com. Yes, I've probably pronounced that wrong. Please go check out their work, which I will link in the description below. So the footage here is going to look better than it does on the original hardware, but to be clear, it still looks great on the 3DS, especially with that 3D slider set to full. Anyway, it's time for A Link Between Worlds, but before we jump in, just a heads up, there is full spoilers ahead. The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds first released for the Nintendo 3DS on the 22nd of November 2013 in both Europe and America, with the rest of the world following within a few days. Here in the UK, an exclusive collector's edition from Game was released that came with a poster, a code of A Link's Awakening for the 3DS, and this neat little Zelda-style treasure chest that stored 3DS cartridges. It even has the sound effect. Luckily, it also came as a pre-order bonus for regular copies as well, so I got my own treasure chest too. Beyond that though, there is no other version to speak of. A Link Between Worlds is unfortunately part of an exclusive club of 3 Zelda games, Triforce Heroes and Four Swords Adventures being the other 2 that have never been released for other systems. Fans have made it known that they want a Switch remaster for years, but considering the console is close to the end of its life cycle, I feel it's pretty unlikely we will see a port or remaster, at least for this generation. However, even if it does, I feel the 3DS, with its full stereoscopic 3D, will always be the best way to play. Even after more than a decade since its release, A Link Between Worlds is still a perfect showcase for the technology. The footage from this 4K fan mod makes the game look great, but nothing can beat that 3D effect from the original system. When I played it for this video, it really made me miss the level of depth the 3D provides to the visuals, and although I highly doubt it ever will, I would love to see it make a comeback on a Nintendo system in the future. It's such a unique feature that changes the visuals in a very immersive way, and it's something that will make the original 3DS hardware forever the best way to play most of its games. With A Link Between Worlds, Nintendo really pushed the 3D effect to its peak, and even integrated it beautifully into the gameplay, which is some of the best experimentation Nintendo has done with the series. Primarily, this plays like a classic top-down Zelda, such as A Link to the Past, which of course is its main inspiration. However, not only were the controls modernized, which are much smoother and responsive than any previous title, but also its game design as well. Strangely though, despite that modernization, A Link Between Worlds actually has a lot in common with its ancestor, the 1986 original Legend of Zelda. Like in that game, you can travel pretty much anywhere on the map, once you finish the prologue at least. You can also tackle most dungeons in any order, There's a few caveats, such as some aren't available straight away, and some have specific requirements to get into, but otherwise, it's pretty much your choice. This more open style is possible because of the new item rental system, which allows you to choose almost any item you like in whatever order you like. It just comes down to how much rupees you have and what items you rent first as to how you will progress through this world. This allows for more fun and interesting ways to traverse the world, and since there is no set way to play through the story and you can rent items in almost any order, the developers were able to design the map to be traversed more frequently by items. For example, the hookshot gets a lot more use here than A Link to the Past, useful for crossing gaps and bridges. There is even some precursor in design elements to Breath of the Wild, as we start to see the idea of shrines in this Hyrule. Short hidden dungeons that require specific items to complete are dotted around the map, and reward you for completing them. There is also 100 Mimi creatures to find. In similar fashion to Koroks in Breath of the Wild, you have to complete a tiny puzzle to reach them or find them, such as dashing into a tree or finding a way to reach them on a high-up ledge and push them from out of the wall. They are rewarding too, giving you upgrades to each item for every 10 you find. There is also the added benefit of that it shows you on the map how many are left in each area, which is something that definitely should have been in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom for finding those hundreds and hundreds of Koroks. This, alongside mini-dungeons, mini-games, and lots more to discover, meant the constant flow of fun distractions reminded me a lot of the two modern 3D Zelda games. It's interesting to see that it started to take shape in A Link Between Worlds, and stemmed a lot from its rental system. When I first played back in 2013 though, I personally didn't like the rental system. I found it took away the reward of completing a dungeon, and I initially didn't like it on this playthrough either. The excitement of returning to the world after a dungeon with a new item to play with was lost in A Link Between Worlds, and to me it made dungeons feel a little less exciting and rewarding because of it. However, on this playthrough, about halfway in, I started to see how much extra fun the rental system created by allowing you to experiment with the items in your own way. I think this realization came about with this playthrough because it's my first time replaying it since Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Two games that give you the tools required to explore the whole map almost from the start. And by doing so, it also creates a huge number of ways to tackle the puzzles and enemies around you and traverse the world. That method works fantastically, but so does A Link Between Worlds method of renting the items, as it gives you a strong sense of progression as you slowly get more of them, but in whatever order you want. In the second half of the story, you're also able to buy the items permanently, so you get all the freedom of getting the items quickly via renting them until you can pay a lot more to keep them later on. This removes a lot of the concern of dying and having all of your rented items returned to Ravio, which in my playthrough on Hero Mode happened a lot. This harder difficulty returns again, and this time the double damage alone is enough to make this one of the more difficult Zelda titles. So much so that the hearts still appear around the map to recover health, unlike in every other Hero Mode. The level of damage you take means you will die from a lot of enemies in one hit, and until I got the damage reducing blue tunic, I found myself frequently dying and having to rebuy my rental items. Admittedly, this was a little annoying, especially in the first half of the game, but it did mean I had to get better at the combat and be more cautious than in my first playthrough, which I remember being a little too easy on the regular difficulty. So although Hero Mode was somewhat annoying at times, I definitely preferred it over the standard playthrough. This only really affects the combat though, but thankfully, the dungeons are also wonderfully designed for not only their difficulty, but their creativity as well. One of the best changes to them for me is that they use one or two items throughout the whole dungeon, not just part of it like in prior games. This is made possible by the developers clearly signposting to the player the items required for each dungeon before you enter them. And although having other items will allow you to get some non-essential secrets, you can complete any dungeon with just the ones shown to you. Later on, some dungeons do have some items required to progress, such as the Titan's Mitt, but also some bonus items that you can completely miss, such as the red and blue tunic for decreasing damage received, and a stamina scroll which increases your stamina bar to allow you to use items more before having to wait for a recharge. All items use this, so you can no longer run out of bombs and arrows, you just have to wait for a recharge. This works well for the gameplay, and although I didn't find it to be any better than how other Zelda games do it, it had no negative impact for me either. The dungeon design itself is also fantastic. Items are used frequently, there is a lot of variation in the puzzles, and the 3D is used beautifully for the verticality of each one. To top it off, each dungeon uses A Link Between Worlds core mechanic wonderfully, known as merging. At basically any time that you come across a flat wall, Link can merge into it as a painting and run around on a 2D plane for as long as his stamina lasts. This allows for very unique ways to traverse not only the dungeons, but the overworld as well, giving the mechanic a lot of versatility across the 18-hour or so campaign. On paper, it doesn't sound like it would add much, but when you play, it really changes up how you have to tackle environments. Dungeons aren't just what you can see from your current top-down perspective anymore. You have to think on an almost 4-dimensional level in order to cling to walls that could take you outside the dungeon or through tiny cracks leading to other rooms. It also comes into play in the great boss battles as well. Some classic Link to the Past bosses return here with some twists to their patterns, but there's new ones as well. A couple of favourites for me are Stalblind, a Stalfos-like skeletal creature who uses a sword and shield to attack, and you must merge into his shield to trick him into dropping his guard to take him out. And Margamel, who is fairly simple in its design, but ultimately fun to fight as it spins around the room and you have to get on top of it to destroy its eye. The boss designs aren't the best in Zelda, but they are a lot of fun regardless. Then of course are the dimensional rifts, where you literally have to think cross-dimensional in order to solve some tricky puzzles, thanks to the existence of a second world, Lorule, which has a great backstory for its existence. Once again, the story here is creative and unique. It's amazing how even though a lot of Zelda games tell a somewhat similar story, the writers still find a way to make them exciting and new. A Link Between Worlds is set centuries after A Link to the Past, but close enough that the world is still mostly the same, and we follow a new incarnation of Link and Zelda. This time around, he's a trainee blacksmith and has to take a sword to the Hyrule captain who foolishly left it behind when he came to collect it. When Link reaches the sanctuary to deliver it, he finds this story's new villain, Yuga, a cross between Giranim from Skyward Sword and Aghanim from A Link to the Past. This new wizard is able to trap people, and most importantly, the 7 sages into paintings. He traps the Hylian captain into a painting, does the same to the sage Ceres to kidnap her, and leaves Link knocked out on the floor. He is soon saved though by a mysterious new character called Ravio, who sets up the item rental shop inside of Link's house. He's a fun, quirky character who is a bit cowardly, but through a diary he leaves in his shop, reveals that he's doing everything he can to help the kingdom of Lorule. He starts out by giving Link a bracelet that later on allows him to merge into walls as a painting at will, which isn't discovered until Link is turned into one by Yuga. Partway through the story, Link finds the Master Sword after obtaining 3 pendants. He goes to defeat Yuga, but he kidnaps Zelda before Link can stop him. After losing the battle, Yuga flees into the world of Lorule via a rift in the wall. In the same style as A Link to the Past's Dark World, this is a variant of Hyrule's map, with canyons blocking your path to certain parts of it, and each area is slightly twisted from what you're used to in Hyrule. Upon arriving, Link finds Yuga reviving the Demon King Ganon. Using his magic, Yuga then fuses them together so that he can obtain Ganon's Triforce of Power. Before Link is defeated though, he is saved by this world's own royal family member, Princess Hilda. She guides him to save all 7 sages trapped across Hyrule. After Link saves them all, he heads to Lorule Castle, only to discover that Hilda has secretly been working with Yuga to gain all 3 pieces of the Triforce to return Lorule back to the peaceful world it once was. Just like in Hyrule, wars were fought to obtain the Triforce. However, in this world, the royal family destroyed their Triforce to keep it out of the reach of evil, rather than sealing it in the Sacred Realm. In doing so, the world became a ruined wasteland where evil reigned anyway. Before she can obtain all 3 pieces though, Yuga betrays her and gets hold of the Triforce of Wisdom that she had obtained. This leads into a very tough final boss. With fast moving and powerful attacks, the Yuga-Ganon fusion combo knocks your health out in seconds, at least on hero mode, and it took me a few tries to take him down. He's difficult, but fair, reminding me of A Link to the Past's final Ganon fight without just copying it. Ultimately, it's a very fun and exciting final battle. Once Link is able to defeat Yuga, along with Zelda's help, they then have to face Hilda. Before they battle though, Ravio shows up, revealing himself as this world's variant of Link. He came to Hyrule to seek the help of a hero to save Hilda from being tricked by Yuga. After he convinces Hilda to stop her plan to steal the Triforce, she sends Link and Zelda back to Hyrule. But in order to create peace in Lorule, Zelda uses the Triforce to wish for them to get their own one back, allowing them to return the world to its former glory. Overall, I found this to be a great story, giving a lot of depth and lore to the world. It treads some familiar ground from its inspiration, but the characters are well designed, especially Ravio, Hilda, and Yuga, and I was genuinely surprised by a lot of the reveals and twists throughout. It's a shame that the story, and Link Between Worlds in general, doesn't get the praise it deserves. It's why a remaster on new hardware could really help it reach a bigger audience and raise its popularity. The only part of the story that I didn't like was that Zelda was barely in it again. After the last 2 games involved her so well, it was a shame to see her relegated to a much smaller role once again. Finally, there's the presentation. Putting aside the 3D, which I have already praised, the graphics still hold up well on their own. A Link Between Worlds runs at a smooth 60 FPS, the first game in the series to do so, and it manages to homage the classic look of the SNES era while also giving off its own style. The accompanying promotional artwork also gives off a great style that I would love to see done more true to form on a future Nintendo system. The overall graphics aren't perfect, it does lack some detail compared to other games in the series, but it overall works well for the handheld form. And it still looks great when displayed in higher resolutions, as per the footage in this video, but bear in mind, it also has some texture work done as well. Then of course is the soundtrack. And this time, I have no complaints. This is one of the best in the series. As expected, it beautifully homages A Link to the Past with remade tracks, but it also mixes in new ones. But it's the overall sound quality of the music that makes it so incredible. It almost sounds like it's fully orchestrated. Created by Ryo Nagamatsu, who worked on Mario Galaxy 2, and would later go on to compose for the Splatoon series and Mario Kart 8, developed a fantastic soundtrack that deserves more praise than it gets. One extra thing I want to mention on the music is the Kakariko Village Milk Bar. In here are 2 musicians who, upon offering a few rupees, will play fantastic acoustic-style renditions of multiple songs from A Link Between Worlds, and even Ballad of the Goddess from Skyward Sword. They are all incredible to listen to and are easy to miss if you're not aware of them. This is a great extra that I recommend everyone checks out. Overall, how does A Link Between Worlds hold up 11 years beyond its release? Well, in a nutshell, it holds up fantastically. This was a grand return to the top-down formula of Zelda, and it seems fitting that the next top-down title in the series will release around the same time as this video. It has fantastic dungeon design, boss fights, combat and puzzles, and for the first time in the series, it reuses a map from a previous title, making it nostalgic to return to without making it dull. It is beautifully presented in its graphics, music, and use of 3D, and it has a unique and fun story that expands on the lore of one of the most revered games in history. I hope this one day gets a remaster for a future Nintendo system, but if it never does, make sure you either play or replay this absolute classic. So 23 years after the Super Nintendo classic, A Link to the Past, it finally got a sequel. One that I feel not only lived up to its predecessor, but surpassed it as well. I hope we get a few more legacy sequels in the future. Personally, I want to see a continuation of Majora's Mask, where Link is older. 23 years since that game released was 2023, so hopefully we can get one in the near future. Until then though, I've got a few more games to cover, and next time I'm on to the second 3DS title, with The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, the third and currently last multiplayer-focused Zelda available. Focused on 3 players instead of 4, and built on the same engine as A Link Between Worlds, this fast-paced, quirky Zelda game gets a lot of hate. But in my next video, I will explain to you why it may just be the best multiplayer title in the series. Be prepared for a special guest as well. See you soon for Triforce Heroes. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Phil, and I'm the creator of the Pixel Tavern. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you're not already, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to stay notified of any future releases, and to check out any previous videos in the series as well. Please also leave a comment on your thoughts for Link Between Worlds. Did you play it with the 3D slider at full? Do you want a remaster? And what do you think of Nintendo reusing a previous map? As usual, if you want to see more of my videos, there are more on screen now, but until the next video everyone, thank you very much for watching.